Cool. So hi, everybody. My name's Eduardo Lees. I'm the Global Opportunities Manager here at Goldsmiths. And this session, I'm going to talk through a little bit about the opportunities that are available to study and work abroad here at Goldsmiths, and then really focus on the kind of some tips on how to apply for these opportunities, kind of good tips for the application form and how to write a good application, hopefully. Yes. So in terms of the opportunities that are available for students here at Goldsmiths, they really fall into two categories. You can study abroad at a partner university for a term as part of your degree. This is where you would go and study specific modules, gain credit, and then bring them back as part of your kind of final degree mark. At postgraduate level, that could also be going abroad to do research and kind of using the time abroad to kind of do research towards your thesis. So that's kind of within your studies, and we have funding for students for that. At the moment, it's from the Erasmus program, which is a European Union funded program. So students will get a monthly grant towards the costs. You also still get your student loan if you're in receipt of that while you're abroad. So in addition to kind of the opportunity to go abroad, there's no extra tuition fees. It's just you go to the partner university, you receive some grants to support with the costs, yeah, you'd be abroad for a term. Once the Erasmus program finishes, which is next year, sadly, because we've left the EU, there's a new program called the Turing Scheme, which is the UK government scheme, and that will continue with kind of offering funding support to students to study and work abroad. So yeah, that kind of gives us a bit more like long-term planning as well for that funding. The other opportunities that we have are opportunities to study, work and volunteer abroad in the summer. So we have Erasmus funding to support students to work abroad in Europe for 2 to 3 months. And you can also do this after you graduate. This is the last year that this opportunity will be available, the work abroad in Europe. But we also have funding which will be available for the next 3 years at least to support students to study, work or volunteer abroad for 2 months or less. This funding comes from Santander universities and from Goldsmiths and supports students to do a whole range of activities. The way this works is that you find your own opportunity. It may be from your own research. It may be something that we as a team send out to you. It might be something from a partner university, such as a summer school. It might be something your department recommends. But then you apply for that opportunity and then you apply to us for funding to support with the costs. And all students can apply for up to £500 to support with the costs of that opportunity. And if you meet our widening participation criteria, you can apply for up to £1,500. So there is funding to do a kind of shorter opportunity over the summer. It doesn't need to be linked to your, doesn't need to be credit bearing. It doesn't need to be linked to your career and kind of studies, but it doesn't need to be part embedded within your studies. And then we also have the same funding opportunity for virtual global opportunities. We introduced this as a result of COVID, which restricted people from traveling. But you can apply for up to £500 to support with the cost of a virtual global opportunity, which could be a remote summer school or an online language course or a remote internship, virtual internship. The key is that it has to be kind of with an international organisation, and it has to be an interaction with people from another country during that opportunity. But students have done that in the last couple of years and have had a really positive experience. So that's another thing to consider. In terms of the impact of COVID, we do have kind of measures in place to manage the risk. So you'd have to get approval before you went. You have to have insurance in place. The UK government the UK Foreign Office has to allow travel to the country, and your host organisation has to have measures in place to manage the risk of COVID. We guide kind of students through all of that, but just to reassure you that there are kind of there's a risk assessment around that going abroad during COVID. And in terms of Brexit, there are also potentially additional immigration requirements to get into the EU now in terms of studying abroad or working abroad. So just something to think about. It's another kind of thing to in the planning stage to think about. In terms of finding a placement, if you're looking to do something over the summer, there's some tips on how to find a placement. So study abroad will depend on your department. So I know we've got someone from music here today. They have partnership with Osaka in Japan, with Christiania in Oslo, and the Rhythmic Music Conservatory in Copenhagen. So those partnerships are specific to that department. But each department, most departments have partnerships. Some don't, in which case then you'll be looking at the summer opportunities. And the summer opportunities, which all students can apply for, are basically it's funding. So you find your placement and then we fund you. So you could ask your department for opportunities, you could speak to the careers service, you could get in touch directly with an organisation that you're interested in working with. We have lots of links on our webpage, so visit our How to Find an International Placement page. There's also, and I will send an email around after this with kind of links to our presentations, but I also did a session earlier in the week on how to find an international placement, which you might want to watch as well, and there'll be slides as well along with that. In terms of the benefits of international experience, I mean, the fact that you're here hopefully means that you already can see the benefit, but I did a year abroad as part of my degree. I've worked abroad in between kind of university and working, and it really is a fantastic experience, and it's really helped me to develop my career and where I am today. I've gained experience of different work and academic styles and environments. You develop a whole range of skills, both personal, such as self-confidence and independence, and professional. So, virtual global opportunities support you to gain digital skills. You gain greater intercultural awareness and communication skills, and you then have examples to really present to employers when you're writing an application or when you're in an interview. So it helps you to stand out from the crowd. You also build new relationships and kind of networks, both for future collaboration or just to have somewhere to stay. Definite benefits to these opportunities. One thing before I move on to how to kind of the application stage, something to bear in mind is you might want to combine the international opportunity with the Gold Award. You can kind of, it can be your main activity of the Gold Award, which is the careers professional development kind of opportunity. And it's a really good way to frame your experience and to kind of pull out the kind of benefits and the skills that you've gained and presented to future employers. So I really recommend having a look at that and kind of considering doing the Gold Award. In terms of getting involved with any of these opportunities, so study abroad for a term is open now. Deadline of the 14th of March, unless you're applying for Osaka, in which case it's in December. I think it's the 6th of December. And then the summer opportunities, funding for them open in January. So there's a bit of time. Really, at the moment, it's about researching those opportunities. As I mentioned, students who meet our widening participation criteria will be eligible for additional funding. There's guidance on application writing on the Go Abroad blog, but I mean, I'm going to talk through most of that now anyway. And generally, widening participation and those who have not had international experience, students who meet those criteria generally are prioritised, and those who have not received Go Abroad funding from us before. But please apply, even if you don't meet those criteria or if you have received funding. We have funded students to go more than once. We have funding available, so we really want students to apply. Good question, Sophie. The summer funding will close probably in March or April, so it will be open for the spring term. And generally, those summer opportunities will be probably you'll be able to go from the end of May to the end of September. That's the kind of period of activity. So, any questions before I go on to writing a good application? And we'll have an open question round at the end, so we can talk more then. But I will carry on if there's not. So writing a good application, I think the first thing is before you start is to get the right opportunity. So review all of the options that are available to you. Which one works best for you? Talk to your tutor or your Erasmus academic coordinator. Read the Go Abroad blogs. There's lots of different stories about students studying or working or learning a language, and just kind of get an idea, because don't necessarily just go for the first thing that comes up. Do have a research and see what other things there might be, and make sure it is the right opportunity for you. Make sure you know the deadlines, critical. We have to be strict with our application deadlines. We can't accept late applications. So do start those applications early. kind of make sure that you're you're not kind of rushing right at the last minute. We've all done it. I've definitely done it. But yeah, and make sure you know the deadlines and kind of start working on that application. Obviously, it takes a bit of time to find some opportunities for the summer, and just think about what kind of funding you need as well. We'll ask that for you in the application form for the summer opportunities. We'll ask that how much funding you might need. A few basics. I know this might sound silly, but a few things to make sure you get right. Use the right form. So for the study abroad for a term, there is kind of one main form. There's actually a separate application form for the Osaka application. So if you are applying for that, make sure you've got the right application form. It's not the kind of general study abroad for a term application that's on our website. There's a separate one for Osaka. If you're doing the summer activities, there are also a couple of different forms depending on which category you fall into. So one of them will be on our website and one of them will be on Santander's website because the funding comes from Santander. So yeah, just make sure you know which form you're looking at. If you have any questions, you can always contact us at Go Abroad in the Go Abroad team. You know, have a look at it in advance, get those questions, maybe work on them offline because the forms can be a bit fiddly online. The frustrating thing with Gecko is the Gecko form, which is the kind of Goldsmiths one that we use, you can't save as you go along. So I would suggest that you draft it in Word. Check whether you meet our widening participation criteria, and I will share a link to that at the end of the presentation to see whether you do, because then you might be eligible for additional funding. Make sure your placement is eligible. If you're looking at the summer opportunities, check the dates and duration. We will when we launch in January, we'll say the placement has to be within these dates. If it's not within these dates, we'll probably reject your application. So make sure that the dates are correct. Make sure that the location meets any requirements. So, for example, if you're applying for the Erasmus funding for work abroad over the summer, then it has to be within Europe. It can't be outside of Europe. So check that. If you're applying for a study abroad for a term at the university, make sure it's a part of the university that's within your department. You can't apply for a university that's outside of your department. If you're a joint honours student, then you can apply for one in either of the departments that you're across. Check the placement type. Is it eligible? Generally, we're quite flexible with placements, but they would need to be with an organisation. And they need to have that COVID kind of secure, like risk management in place. So good to check that in advance as well. Think about what funding you need as well. We actually have a lot of different additional pots of funding. So in addition to, if you're going for a longer time anyway, for the study abroad for a term or for working abroad in Europe for 2 to 3 months, we have some additional funding to support disabled students with language learning and green travel fund as well. So check if there's any additional funding you can check, you can apply for as well. In terms of why you're applying, this is important as well. So I've already mentioned kind of choosing, make sure you've chosen the right opportunity for you. Sometimes we see applications and we think, oh, actually, it feels like they should really be applying for this, for something different. I know when I applied to do my Erasmus abroad, I put down that I wanted to go to Bologna. That was my first choice. I tried to make a passionate plea for it, but actually, for my course, I was better suited to the study placement in Verona, and my academic tutor, who ultimately kind of was part of the panel that assessed the applications, felt that and kind of allocated me to Verona, and I had a wonderful time. So do make sure that you've kind of done your research, and you'll need to clearly explain why you've chosen the institution or the organisation and why that particular country. And with the institution organisation, we want to see that it's kind of, you've thought about it, you've researched it, it links to your career, it links to your studies. Don't be afraid of writing too much. I mean, when you need to be quite succinct, but don't be afraid of writing too much. Do answer the question, and make sure you've kind of really told us, and don't try to avoid kind of generic statements if possible, or statements that other people might kind of say. So for a particular country, for example, I used to recruit to a program in India, and people always used to say, oh, I love Indian food, that's why I want to go to India, which may be a good reason, but actually lots of other people have said it, so it makes you stand out less. And it's also, you know, there are other, you might be more, something that would be a better answer, for example, would be, you know, have a particular ambition to organize events with Indian partners, and I want to understand the supply chain, or I want to understand kind of what the you know, I'm organizing events for a particular community of people, and I want to understand this from this area. Those kind of things would be much stronger than kind of a very specific, like, generic kind of statement about liking a country, for example. So there needs to be a bit of depth around that, and what attracts you to your destination. You know, you have a love of specific literature or film from that country, or this university has a real focus on sustainability and you want to learn from that university, or you want to go to Japan because it will influence your music practice in a certain way. You have an interest in that particular area of you know, it's very different from Western music or something like that. You know, there's ways that you can really link it into your studies and your career. Is there unique, I kind of touched on this, you know, is there unique kind of work that the institution or organisation does that would really complement your career or your studies? And what will you gain there that you won't gain from anywhere else? Think about that and put that down and do a little bit of research around that. In terms of what makes you a good applicant, so really talking about yourself and your future, and don't be shy. I know in applications it's often you know, it feels a bit uncomfortable sometimes to really talk yourself up, but you know, really talk about the experience and skills that you have, how, you know, some of those skills could really help you while you're abroad. So maybe you've had a part-time job, or maybe you've did a language exchange, or maybe on your course you're a student rep, or you do kind of lots of research, and that will help with the research activity that you're doing abroad. Think about those experiences that you have, but then also say, what are you going to gain? How is it going to link to your future? How is it going to link to your studies? You know, by doing this opportunity, it will really influence the third year of your degree, for example. What are your future plans as well? And again, linking to your career, kind of like I was saying a minute ago, you know, I have an ambition we had someone last year who was applying for one of the summer schools in Amsterdam, and it was around kind of brand development and kind of engaging audiences. And, you know, they were like, I have a small business that I run. I want to expand it. I want to run a bigger business in the future. This course will help me to build my skills in this area and help me to improve that. You know, that kind of thing really stands out in terms of an application. Be concrete. Make sure you kind of, as I've said this already, connecting your placement with your studies or your career. Really show how it's relevant. Again, avoid kind of generic examples, and tell us everything. Expand your points, give examples, show us your passion, write something different. I've touched on this with people saying the same answers, but you know, when we're assessing applications, there's lots of, you know, we might be getting through kind of 30 and then trying to read through 30 in an hour or two. You want to try and stand out by writing in a slightly different way, or writing something that's particularly interesting. Sometimes bullet points can be useful as well, to break up the kind of structure of an application. So yeah, think about how you can structure it and make it stand out. And then checking. This is my personal kind of bugbear, is make sure, you know, draft your application in Word, make sure your spelling and grammar is correct. I appreciate that there sometimes can be reasons why people might struggle with some of these things, but nowadays with kind of spell check or getting somebody else to look at it, it's really important to make sure that kind of as close as possible your spelling and grammar is correct. And this is where it's so important to show your application to a friend or a family member and get their feedback. You could take it to the career service as well for them to have a look at. Make sure your email address is correct. I once submitted a CV with a phone number that was incorrect. It was so embarrassing, and it caused a whole load of issues. So just make sure all of those details are correct, as they all kind of count towards your application and the overall impression that we get of you. So I'll open up for questions in a second, but just in terms of the next steps, visit our Go Abroad website. to look for more information. I will share some links in a second, and do sign up for our Go Abroad VLE page. If you just go onto the VLE and search Go Abroad, you can join the community, and we'll share lots of alerts on there, especially about summer opportunities. Start researching, research those destinations, have a think about kind of where you want to go and what you're interested in. Do arrange a meeting with Careers or with the Go Abroad team. We're in the space every Wednesday morning, generally during term time. So feel free to pop in then. Read the Go Abroad blog for more information from kind of student experiences, and then start applying. And yeah, good luck. I think I've got one more page, which is just kind of links to all of the information. I'm just going to share as well an evaluation form, if you wouldn't mind filling that in, just to let me know how the session's gone. And then what I'll do now is just say, it's come out quite big, but yeah, just to say thank you very much for listening. I'm going to stop the recording now, and we can do some questions.